Listeners, welcome to our second session of this little mini narrative unit that we have been launching this week. So today, writers, we're going to be revising one of your narratives, one of your stories, to bring out the missing or underdeveloped parts of the story structure. This is a revision lesson, so I would say um, if you're not happy with a story that you've already written, and you want to start from scratch today, that would probably be okay. Just know that you're going to need to do the writing portion of this work and the revision work all in one. Okay, how do we do this? So, first of all, we have to study the story arc. What elements should a story include? We're going to have to lay that out, and we'll take a look at that in a second. And then, once you've done that, you're clear on what is involved with the story arc. You need to reread your story and identify how the parts of your story fit on that story arc. And then you got to ask yourself, well, what parts do I have? What parts are missing? Do I need to make a part that I have stronger? And then once you do that, you can go ahead and do the writing work of revising to include those missing parts or strengthening weak parts of this narrative. All right, let's get going. You are going to need this tool that is attached to the lesson, How Stories Tend to Go. This is invaluable. This has all the different things that you need to include in a great story. So you need a main character, but just as important, this main character needs to have motivations, like hopes, wants, desires. There has to be a problem, some trouble or tension, something that's happening in the story that is provoking some kind of emotional response. You're seeing emotions. And then you have to have things that happen that are related to the problem. And then you have to have more than one of these things. You have to have a problem that's getting bigger or a problem that's coming out. You need to have some tension that increases, like, for the character. And then you also need to see that the character's trying to solve this problem. And then finally, you have to have a resolution, some sense of closure to the story. And pro tip here, this motivation usually, or the problem ties into this resolution. It doesn't just say like the story just ends. A really good story will have kind of hints of that, what's going to happen in the end, in the very very beginning. Okay, so some questions to ask yourself as you read your story. So this is a tool you're going to use. So, does your character have a want or a hope? Have you given the character a clear problem and written some things related to the problem? And then, does your story have a clear resolution? All right. So, just a reminder here: what's a story arc, right? We got to study the story arc and figure out what elements should be included in a story. And so, I thought it'd be helpful here to look at Cinderella's story arc. And some of you might remember this from the beginning of the year, when we kind of modeled this. So here are this is Cinderella's story laid out on this story arc. So in the beginning, we have the problem. We have the character. We meet Cinderella. Let me go back to that. Whoops. We meet Cinderella. We see her hopes, dreams, and motivations. Right? She's there, sewing away, doing all her chores. I think she just wants her chores to end. Then we see the problem. She wants to go to the ball, but she's got to do these chores for her stepsister. Then we see the problem sort of getting resolved, right? This is something that's related to the problem. The animals help the fairy godmother out. She goes to the ball. She meets the prince. But then we see another thing that's related to the problem. The problem is getting worse. Cinderella has to leave the ball. She loses her slipper. And then, if you can believe it, the problem gets even worse. The prince can't find Cinderella. Then the problem gets even worse. The stepsister tries to get the prince, right? She tries to stick her fat foot in that slipper. But in the end, it doesn't work because the prince finds Cinderella and the shoe fits. And this is really nice because it sort of connects this resolution with the shoe, fits in with like the problem here, like with her not being able to go to the ball and her like fairy godmother sort of like helping her out, right? It sort of connects there, back there. So that's the story arc. These are the things that you need to include on the story arc, right? The characters in the beginning, a sort of initial problem, and then the problem getting worse, or the problem, the tension rising, or maybe the character trying to like solve their problems, right? So we're going to take this into our own story. So I'm going to model for you how I did this. So the next step in doing this work is you got to reread your story, and you have to identify how the parts of your story fit in on that story arc, and then you have to ask yourself those questions. So I'm just going to reread for you my story about Ralphie that I finished yesterday. Bam! The apartment door flew open, and Ralphie threw his books down in disgust. He tossed his coat and hat on a chair and stomped into the kitchen and opened the door to the fridge. Nothing except mustard, half an onion, and some weird brown stuff his grandma liked to eat. Just then, Ralphie remembered. Oh, man, Mom gave me money to buy stuff for dinner. Why didn't I buy it on my way home? I had to go out again. This is the worst day ever. When is it going to end? Just then, he heard the sound of his grandma's slippers shuffling down the hall. Is that you, Ralphie? Grandma Inez called out. Yeah, Grandma. I'm going to the store. Do you need anything? His tiny grandma poked her head into the kitchen, and she smiled a toothless grin. How's Grandma's big boy? Ralphie blushed a little and rolled his eyes, and he said, I'm fine, Grandma. I'm going out. What do you want? Some more coffee and cookies? Grandma smiled her big, denture teeth smile and said, Bring me back a happy grandson. Ralphie gave her a weak smile, and he put his coat and hat back on and headed out the door. He began a long walk to the closest supermarket. He had had a tough day at school, and he wished he didn't have to go out again and buy groceries. But ever since Grandma fell on the ice and broke her hip, his mom relied on him to do some of the shopping. Wah! Ralphie slipped on a patch of ice and fell to his knees, breathing hard. Whoa, that was a close one. Wait, what's this? Ralphie spotted something green sticking out of the snow. He dug it out and unfolded a brand new $20 bill. Wow, I would have never found them if I didn't fall down. Put the money in his pocket and continued.
He put the money into his pocket and he continued on to the store. The worst day just became the best day ever.
Wow, I would have never found them if I didn't fall down. He put the money in his pocket and continued. Okay, so in order to do this work, the first thing I need to make sure I'm doing is out my story on the story arc. So this is Ralphie's story. And then I want to take a look at my tool, how stories tend to go, so that I know what goes on my story arc in each place. So I know in the beginning, I'm definitely going to be meeting a main character and looking at motivations, hopes, and wants. So in the beginning of my story, we meet Ralphie. Motivations, hopes, and wants. I'm not sure it's really clear that he has motivations, hopes, and wants beyond, he comes in and he's like, seems like he's angry, right? But we don't really know why. And then he, someone maybe put that angry, we don't know why. I guess we see him go in the refrigerator. Like, I know when I come in from work, sometimes I'll go right to the fridge and look and see what we have. So maybe he's hungry? Maybe? I'm not entirely sure. Okay. So, but we have the character. We meet Ralphie. Okay. So the next thing we're going to be looking to do is to sort of see the problem, the trouble or tension. Usually there's some kind of emotional response from the character. Well, we definitely see him have an emotional response when he realizes that there's no food and he has to go shopping. So I'm going to put that here. The problem. No food in the house. Needs to shop. All right, awesome. So that's the main problem. So I'll just put these points here on the story arc so we know where they go. All right. Now, as we go on, once we've established the main character and the problem, there are things that happen that are related to the problem. So the problem may get bigger, maybe the tension increases for the character, or sometimes the character, they try to solve the problem. Well, I definitely see that Ralphie tries to solve the problem of no food because he gets himself together and he goes to shop. So I'm going to say over here, I'm going to say problem. And I'm going to put a plus because this is like related to the problem, something that is related to the problem. Has to shop. Okay. And you know what? We sort of like see the reason he has to shop is because the grandma has broken her head. Right? That's kind of the reason. So that's the reason he has to shop, because the grandma has her hip broken. That's an element. You know, another element that's kind of like in the same sort of part of my story is that the grandma's a little bit embarrassing. Right? She's like calling him her big boy. That's kind of a little bit embarrassing. Okay. So man, grandma's embarrassing. That could be part of the problem here too. I don't want to include that there. All right. What else happens in the story that is related? Some other things that happen that are related to the problem. The problem is getting bigger, or another problem emerges. Maybe the tension increase. I'm thinking that, you know, as he's walking, he you know, he falls on the ice, right? That's the problem getting bigger. So over here, again, problem plus is related to the problem. He falls on the ice. Okay. And then finally we get to the resolution where he finds the money. Right? He's happy. Finally he's happy. Okay? So that's my story. Here on my story arc, I have definitely I have the main character, I have the problem, I have things happen that are related to the problem, and I have a resolution. So that's good. But now I need to ask myself, now that I've reread it, does my character have a want or a hope? Well, we meet the character, but I'm not quite sure if he has a want or a hope. So maybe over here, and I'm going to do this in another color, this could be my revision that I need to make. So need, want, or a hope. You know what I'm really thinking? I'm thinking over here, the resolution kind of talks about him being like happy because he finds money. So maybe this motivation could be that he needs money, right? He's hoping that he gets some money. I think that would really tie in nice and neatly at the end. You always kind of want to like hint that the problem here in the beginning, the motivation, and then tie it in with the resolution at the end. That's what really good stories do that kind of thing. So that's something I'm going to do in my revision. Next question, as I reread this, is have I given my character a clear problem and then written some things related to the problem? Well, I've definitely given him a problem, right? Like he has to shop. And I've done a couple of things along the way, but I think this could be better. You know, I kind of like mentioned along the way that the grandma has had this injury, but I don't really know about how does Ralphie feel? Ralphie feels how? I need to add that. Need to add maybe feelings. How can I show those feelings? Maybe emotions, right? Because I feel like if your grandma like had a broken hip, you know, you wouldn't just feel like, ugh, I gotta go to the store because this broken old lady can't do it. I feel like you probably have some more feelings about it than that. And then the last thing, does your story have a clear resolution? I think for me, my resolution is pretty clear. Like he finds the money, that's really exciting. The only thing I think I would maybe add is like maybe add some more things that are related to the problem. So if I go back to that section on my tool, the problem gets bigger or another problem emerges. I'm not sure the tension increases for the character. So maybe I could do that, some work over here about like maybe before he falls on the ice, I could maybe add more tension. Okay. So this is kind of like my to-do list. I have my story laid out on the arc, but these parts in red are the things that I'm going to go through and revise when I go off to do.
When I go off to do that work. All right. So you are going to be doing the following. As you go in to do this work your own self, make sure you study that story arc. Make sure you're very clear on what the elements of a good story you're including. And then I want you to reread your story. It's so important that you identify how the parts of your story fit on that story arc. And only then can you ask yourself, like, what parts do I have? What parts are missing? And then, do I need to make a part stronger? This part is really important. This is how really good stories go from good to great. It's by not just being satisfied by like, yeah, I have it, I can check it off the list, but by making the parts that you have stronger. So make sure that you are also revising your narrative once you've done that story arc work to include the missing parts and strengthen the parts that are weak. I am expecting that you are turning in 2 things. 1 is your story arc, your story on that story arc, just like I did. 2 is your revised story. Use your tools. It's very important that you include in your revision that you're using those tools.